What if the very system meant to protect you is secretly working against you? Maya Jackson, a hardworking single mother, walked into court expecting justice, only to be met with a smirking judge who had already decided her fate. Falsely accused of a crime she didn't commit, she stood alone, powerless, or so they thought. But what the corrupt judge didn't realize was that Maya wasn't just another victim. She was a fighter. And when she uncovered a hidden conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power, she did something no one expected. What happened next would shake the entire system to its core. This is the true crime story of how one woman took on a corrupt judge, exposed a powerful network of criminals, and risked everything to bring them down. Stay with us until the end, because this isn't just about justice. It's about survival. Maya Jackson stood frozen, her breath shallow, as the entire courtroom watched in stunned silence. The silver-haired judge, Ronald Warwick, leaned back in his high-backed leather chair, a cruel smirk curling at the corners of his thin lips. "You think you can stand in my court and accuse me of corruption?" His voice dripped with amusement, but there was something else beneath it, something sharp and dangerous. The prosecutor, Jacob Rowan, looked up from his papers, clearly caught off guard by what was happening. The jury, too, shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Maya and the judge. She could feel the weight of every stare pressing down on her, trying to smother the fire in her chest. But she wouldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything they had done to her. With her voice steady, Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a small, black flash drive. She held it up for everyone to see. "This," she said, her voice cutting through the tense air, "is evidence of financial fraud, embezzlement, case-fixing, bribery. And guess whose name is all over it?" She turned to the judge, her dark eyes locking onto his. "Yours." The judge's smirk faltered. Whispers spread through the courtroom like wildfire. A few gasps escaped from the jury box. The stenographer's hands trembled over the keys. Judge Warwick narrowed his eyes, his amusement gone. "You don't know what you're doing, Miss Jackson," he said, his voice now low and venomous. Maya took a deep breath and turned her gaze toward the back of the courtroom, where two figures in dark suits stood near the entrance. The moment she gave a small nod, they moved forward. Judge Ronald Warwick, the taller man, said, his voice firm and authoritative. "We're with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You are under investigation for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and financial fraud." The courtroom erupted into chaos. The judge shot up from his seat, his chair scraping loudly against the polished wood floor. "This is outrageous," he bellowed, his face turning red. "You can't come into my court, and you're done." Maya cut in, her voice unwavering. "You used your position to ruin innocent lives, including mine. And now the whole world is going to know." Before the judge could react, the FBI agent stepped forward. One of them placed a firm hand on his shoulder, while the other pulled out a pair of silver handcuffs. For the first time, the smirk disappeared completely from Judge Warwick's face. Maya's heart pounded as she watched him struggle, his voice rising in fury. "This isn't over," he shouted, his eyes burning with hatred as the agents forced his hands behind his back. "You think you've won? You have no idea who you're dealing with." But Maya only watched as they led him away. She had spent months fighting for this moment. And now, the man who had nearly destroyed her life was being taken down by the very system he had corrupted. Yet, deep in her gut, she knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 6 months earlier, Maya Jackson's life had been ordinary. She worked as an accounts manager at Crestview Bank, a job she had fought hard to get. A single mother to a bright-eyed 6-year-old daughter, Brianna, Maya had built a stable life from the ground up. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Then, everything changed. It started with a letter, a plain white envelope with no return address, slipped into her mailbox like an afterthought. Inside, a court summons with her name on it. The charges: fraud, embezzlement, breach of contract. Maya had stared at the paper, the words blurring together as a cold knot formed in her stomach. She had done nothing wrong. But by the time she realized what was happening, it was too late. She was fired from her job. Her landlord served her an eviction notice. And when she tried to explain, to fight back, doors kept slamming in her face. Then came the courtroom. Judge Ronald Warwick presided over the case with barely concealed amusement. From the moment Maya stepped into his courtroom, she knew the odds were stacked against her. She didn't have a lawyer. She couldn't afford one. The prosecution painted her as a criminal, showing carefully crafted evidence that tied her name to missing funds at the bank. Every time Maya tried to speak, the judge shot her down. And then came the final blow. Bail was set at $50,000, a ridiculous sum for someone who had never even been arrested before. As the gavel came down, sealing her fate, Maya saw the judge's smirk. It wasn't just arrogance. It was something worse. He knew. He knew she was innocent, and he was enjoying every second of it. That night, as Maya sat in a cold detention cell, the weight of the injustice crushing her, she made a promise to herself. She would prove the truth. She would expose Judge Warwick, and she would take back her life. What she didn't know was that she wasn't the only one watching the judge. In a small office across town, a man named David Chan scrolled through a series of encrypted emails on his laptop. Special Agent Chan had spent months investigating financial irregularities connected to Crestview Bank. The patterns were clear: money being funneled into hidden accounts, names being erased from logs, cases being dismissed under suspicious circumstances. And now a new name had appeared in the mix: Maya Jackson. Chan tapped his fingers against the desk, studying the details of her case. Something about it didn't add up. He didn't know it yet, but Maya Jackson was about to become the key to everything. And someone powerful was willing to do whatever it took to keep her quiet. Maya was released on bail, but the damage had already been done. Her employer refused to take her back. The case had made local news, turning her into an outcast. Friends stopped calling. Even some of her neighbors started looking at her differently. But she refused to give up. She started digging. She requested records from her bank. She went through every transaction, every detail she could find. She tracked down former employees who had been fired under similar circumstances. And slowly, a pattern emerged. Every single one of them had gone before Judge Warwick. And every single one of them had lost. Then, one night, as Maya sat in her tiny apartment, flipping through stacks of old financial reports, her phone buzzed with an anonymous message. "I believe you're innocent. Don't trust anyone in that courthouse. Keep digging." Her fingers trembled as she read it over and over. Who had sent it, and why did they care? She didn't know yet, but she was about to find out. And the next time she stepped into that courtroom, she wouldn't be the one on trial. She'd be the one bringing the whole system down. Maya's hands trembled as she read the message again. "I believe you're innocent. Don't trust anyone in that courthouse. Keep digging." It came from an unknown number. No name. No clue who had sent it. She stared at her phone, heart pounding. Was it a trap? A warning? Or was there actually someone out there who believed her? She typed a reply. "Who are you? How do you know I'm innocent?" The message was never delivered. The number had already been disconnected. Maya's throat tightened. Someone was watching her case. But were they trying to help her or silence her? She took a deep breath, pushing the fear aside. If someone was paying attention, that meant she was onto something. She needed to keep going. The next morning, Maya slipped into a booth at a small cafe near the courthouse. Across from her sat Rebecca Murphy, an investigative journalist with the Crestview Times. Rebecca had reached out to Maya after her arrest, saying she wanted to hear her side of the story. At first, Maya had been hesitant. She had no reason to trust reporters. But after everything, she had no choice. "You really believe Judge Warwick is involved in something bigger?" Maya asked, stirring her coffee. Rebecca nodded, lowering her voice. "Absolutely. Warwick has been fixing cases for years. He helps the people who can afford him, business executives, corrupt officials, anyone with money. And when they need a scapegoat, he makes sure the innocent ones go down instead." Maya's stomach churned. Why haven't they caught him? Rebecca let out a dry laugh. "Because he's careful. He doesn't leave paper trails. No one dares to testify against him. And the few who have," she hesitated, "they disappeared. Or had accidents." A chill ran down Maya's spine. "What do you mean? Accidents?" Rebecca took out a small notebook and flipped to a page. One man, Adam Brooks, was a whistleblower at a major real estate firm. He had evidence of illegal deals connected to Warwick's court rulings. A week before he was set to testify, his car lost control on the freeway. Another woman, Vanessa Hill, she was a clerk at the courthouse. Rumor was she found out something she wasn't supposed to. She drowned in a hotel bathtub. It was ruled an accident, but her friends said she was terrified of something before it happened. Maya's fingers clenched around her coffee cup. So, you're saying if I push too hard, I might end up like them? Rebecca gave her a serious look. I'm saying you need to be careful, but you also have something they didn't. What's that? Rebecca leaned in. A reason for the FBI to listen. You're not just an outsider exposing corruption. You're a victim of it. If you can gather enough proof, they won't be able to ignore it. Maya swallowed hard. And if I can't? Rebecca exhaled. Then Warwick wins. And you go to prison for a crime you didn't commit. Maya felt the weight of those words settle on her chest. She had no choice. She had to take down the judge. Later that evening, Maya sat at her kitchen table, flipping through documents from Crestview Bank. She had spent the last few weeks gathering anything she could: emails, transaction reports, old meeting notes. She needed to find the connection between Warwick and her former employer. Somewhere in this mess, there had to be a trail leading back to him. Just as she was about to give up for the night, her phone buzzed. It was Rebecca. I found something, she said urgently. Meet me now. Same cafe. Maya didn't hesitate. She grabbed her coat, kissed Brianna goodnight, and rushed out the door. The cafe was nearly empty when Maya arrived. Rebecca sat in the farthest booth, a laptop open in front of her. She looked up, her expression tense. Maya slid into the seat. What did you find? Rebecca turned the laptop toward her. On the screen was an old court document, a financial case from 5 years ago. Warwick oversaw this case, Rebecca explained. The defendant was a banker who was accused of embezzling company funds. The charges were mysteriously dropped, and the case was sealed. Maya frowned. So? Rebecca clicked on another tab. The same bank executive who got off easy? He later became the regional director of Crestview Bank. The same bank that fired you? Maya's blood ran cold. Harold Whitcomb? Rebecca nodded. Warwick cleared his name years ago. Now, Whitcomb runs the bank. And when money starts disappearing, suddenly you're the one taking the fall. It was all connected. Judge Warwick and Harold Whitcomb had been working together for years. And now, they were using her as their scapegoat. Maya's hand shook. This is enough, right? To prove they're connected? Rebecca hesitated. It's a good start, but we need something solid. A financial paper trail. Emails. Transactions linking Warwick to the money. Maya's mind raced. There had to be something. And then it hit her. The security logs, she said suddenly. Every time I accessed the bank system, it recorded a time and location. If someone else used my login while I wasn't there, Rebecca's eyes widened. It would prove you were framed. Maya nodded. But the only way to get those logs is from inside Crestview Bank. Rebecca gave her a sharp look. You're not thinking of going back there, are you? Maya clenched her jaw. I don't have a choice. Rebecca sighed. All right, but if you do this, be smart. If Whitcomb realizes what you're up to, I'll be careful, Maya promised. But deep down, she knew there was no way to do this carefully. She was about to walk straight into enemy territory, and if she wasn't careful, she might not walk out. The next morning, Maya arrived at Crestview Bank wearing her old employee badge. The security guard at the front barely looked at her as she walked in. She had spent months working here. She knew exactly where to go. Keeping her head down, she made her way to the IT department. Most of the employees were already at their desks, too busy to notice her slip past. She found an empty computer and sat down. Her fingers moved quickly, searching for the security logs. Her heart pounded as the file loaded. And then there it was. On the dates the fraudulent transactions took place, her login credentials had been used, but not from her computer. The access had come from Harold Whitcomb's office. Maya stared at the screen, her pulse racing. She had the proof. But before she could copy the files, a voice cut through the silence behind her. What do you think you're doing? Maya's stomach twisted. She turned slowly, coming face to face with Harold Whitcomb himself. His expression was dark, his eyes filled with suspicion. You shouldn't be here, Miss Jackson, he said, stepping closer. And I don't think you want to make this any worse for yourself. Maya's blood ran cold. She had been caught, and now she had no idea how she was going to get out. Maya's pulse thundered in her ears as Harold Whitcomb loomed over her. His sharp blue eyes bore into her, cold and calculating. She forced herself to stay calm. I was just what? Whitcomb interrupted, his voice low but filled with quiet menace. Looking through private bank records? That's a serious offense, Miss Jackson. Maya swallowed hard. The computer screen behind her still displayed the access logs, the proof that someone had used her credentials from his office. If Whitcomb saw it, she'd never make it out of here with the evidence. She had to think fast. I was looking for my severance paperwork, she lied, shifting in her seat. The HR department said they emailed it, but I never got it. Thought maybe I could find it myself. Whitcomb studied her for a long moment. Then he leaned over the desk, reaching past her. Maya tensed. If he touched the keyboard, he'd see the files. She did the only thing she could think of. She spilled her coffee. The hot liquid splashed onto the desk, dripping onto the keyboard. The screen flickered, then went dark as the system shut down automatically to prevent damage. Damn it! Whitcomb snapped, stepping back as the coffee soaked into his expensive suit. I'm so sorry, Maya stammered, grabbing tissues from a nearby desk and shoving them at him. I didn't mean to. I'll pay for the cleaning, I swear. Whitcomb scowled, dabbing at his shirt. Forget it, he muttered, clearly annoyed. But you shouldn't be here, Jackson. You don't work here anymore. Maya forced a sheepish smile. Yeah, you're right. I'll go. She turned on her heel and walked as casually as she could toward the exit, every muscle in her body screaming at her to run. She had been seconds away from getting caught. But more importantly, she had seen the truth with her own eyes. She was being framed, and Harold Whitcomb was behind it. Maya spent the rest of the day trying to steady her nerves. She had almost blown it, but she also knew exactly what she needed now: the full security logs. But how? She didn't have access to the bank systems anymore, and she had barely managed to sneak in once without raising suspicions. Whitcomb would be on high alert now. She needed a different plan. So, she turned to the only person who could help: Rebecca Murphy. They met that night at a diner on the edge of town. The place was quiet, the kind of spot where no one paid attention to anyone else. Rebecca slid into the booth across from her. You look like you saw a ghost, she said, setting down her notepad. I almost got caught, Maya admitted. But I found what we need. The proof. The access logs show my credentials were used, but from Whitcomb's office. Rebecca's eyes widened. That's huge. Maya nodded. But I couldn't copy the files. The computer shut down before I could do anything. Rebecca tapped her fingers against the table, thinking. We need someone who can get those files for us. Maya hesitated. I don't know anyone who works in IT. Rebecca smirked. But I do. The next morning, Rebecca made a call to an old college friend, Jake Turner, a cybersecurity expert who worked as a consultant for financial firms. Jake met them at a small coffee shop later that evening, his laptop slung over his shoulder. He was young, scruffy, and had the look of someone who spent more time with computers than people. You need security logs? He asked, sipping his drink. That's risky. Maya leaned forward. Can you do it? Jake shrugged. Depends. Does the bank use remote servers or local storage? Maya shook her head. They have a remote backup system, but only senior employees have access to it. Jake grinned. Then we don't need to hack anything. We just need a senior employee's login credentials. Maya's stomach tightened. And how do we get those? Jake's grin widened. We make them give it to us? That night, Maya found herself parked outside Crestview Bank once again, her heart pounding as she watched the building from her car. Rebecca and Jake sat beside her, watching the front entrance. There he is, Rebecca murmured. Harold Whitcomb stepped out of the building, his suit crisp, his expression unreadable. He climbed into his sleek black BMW and drove off. Showtime, Jake said. They followed at a distance, keeping their headlights off. Whitcomb's car weaved through the city streets until he pulled into the parking lot of an upscale steakhouse. Maya's fingers curled around the seatbelt. How are we going to get his login? Jake smirked. We're going to make him give it to us? Maya glanced at Rebecca, who looked just as confused. What does that mean? Maya asked. Jake pulled a small device from his pocket. This is a keystroke recorder. If we can get it onto his laptop or phone, we can capture everything he types, including his login info. Maya frowned. And how do we do that? Jake's grin widened. By making sure he leaves his phone unattended. Inside the restaurant, Whitcomb sat at a table near the back, sipping an expensive glass of wine as he scrolled through his phone. Maya and Rebecca sat at the bar, close enough to see him, but far enough not to draw attention. Jake had already disappeared, moving through the restaurant with the ease of someone who belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. Maya's hands trembled as she watched Whitcomb. If this went wrong, they were screwed. Then it happened. A waiter accidentally bumped into Whitcomb, knocking his wine glass over. The deep red liquid splashed across his expensive suit. Damn it! Whitcomb cursed, standing up quickly, his phone slipping from his hand and landing on the table. Maya's breath caught as she saw Jake move in. With practiced ease, Jake brushed past the table, his fingers barely touching the phone as he slid the keystroke recorder into place. Whitcomb cursed under his breath, grabbing napkins to wipe himself off. He didn't even notice. Jake kept walking, slipping out of the restaurant like a ghost. Seconds later, Maya's phone buzzed. Jake's message was short. It's done. The next morning, Maya sat at her kitchen table, staring at Jake's laptop. The keystroke recorder had worked. She could see everything Whitcomb had typed. And there it was, his login credentials. Maya's breath hitched. She had what she needed. The bank's security logs. The proof. The link between Whitcomb and Judge Warwick. It was over. Or so she thought. Because just as she reached for her phone to call Rebecca, a loud bang echoed through the apartment. Maya froze. Then came another bang. Someone was kicking down her door. Her stomach dropped. She had been caught. The third kick splintered the door frame. Maya shot up from her chair, heart hammering. Someone was breaking into her apartment. Brianna. Her daughter was asleep in the next room. Maya lunged for her phone, but before she could dial 911, the door burst open. A man in dark clothing stepped inside. His face was shadowed under a hood, but Maya could see the glint of something metallic in his hand. A gun. She barely had time to react before he moved toward her. Maya's survival instincts kicked in. She grabbed the laptop from the table and hurled it at him. It hit his arm, knocking the gun slightly off course as he fired. The shot rang out. A framed picture on the wall shattered, glass raining onto the floor. Maya didn't stop to think. She spun on her heels and ran. Down the hall, straight into Brianna's room. She yanked her daughter from bed, clutching her tight. "Mommy," Brianna mumbled sleepily, rubbing her eyes. "No time, baby," Maya whispered, her voice shaking. "We have to go." The man's footsteps pounded behind her. Maya darted toward the window. It was her only way out. She fumbled with the latch, but before she could push it open, a hand grabbed her wrist from behind. A scream tore from her throat as the man yanked her backward, his grip bruising. Brianna shrieked. Maya twisted, lashing out with her free arm. Her elbow caught the man in the ribs. He grunted, loosening his hold just enough for her to kick him hard in the knee. He staggered. Maya didn't wait for him to recover. She threw open the window, hoisted Brianna into her arms, and jumped. The cold air hit her like a slap as they tumbled onto the fire escape. She didn't stop moving. Barefoot and gasping for breath, she sprinted down the metal stairs, clutching Brianna against her chest. Another gunshot whizzed past them, striking the railing just inches from her head. She kept going. 3 flights. 2 flights. 1. She hit the ground and bolted toward the street, her legs screaming in protest. A car screeched to a stop in front of them. Maya barely had time to register who was behind the wheel before the door flung open. "Get in, Rebecca." Maya didn't hesitate. She threw Brianna into the back seat, diving in right after her. Rebecca hit the gas. The tires screeched as they peeled away from the curb, the apartment shrinking in the rearview mirror. Maya twisted in her seat, trying to catch her breath. Her hands were shaking so badly, she could barely buckle Brianna's seatbelt. "Are you okay?" Rebecca asked, her eyes darting between the road and Maya. Maya sucked in a ragged breath. "Someone just broke into my apartment. They had a gun." Rebecca's hands clenched around the wheel. We need to get you somewhere safe. Maya swallowed hard, her mind racing. No, we need to go to the FBI. Rebecca glanced at her. Are you sure? Maya nodded, gripping Brianna's hand. She had been running for too long. It was time to fight back. FBI Special Agent David Chon looked up from his desk as Maya and Rebecca stormed into the field office, a terrified 6-year-old clinging to Maya's side. Chon stood, his sharp eyes narrowing. What happened? Maya didn't waste time. Someone just tried to kill me. Chan's expression hardened. Start from the beginning. Maya and Rebecca quickly explained everything. The break-in, the gunshots, the fire escape. Maya could still feel the adrenaline rushing through her veins as she recounted the attack. When she finished, Chon leaned back in his chair, processing. This isn't just about your case anymore, he said grimly. They wouldn't send someone after you unless they knew you had something big. Maya inhaled deeply. I do. She pulled Wickham's stolen login credentials from her pocket. This, she said, placing the slip of paper on the table. This gets us into the security logs. It proves Wickham framed me. Chon picked it up, his expression unreadable. And how exactly did you get this? Maya hesitated. Rebecca cut in. It's better if you don't know. Chon exhaled sharply, but nodded. Fine. Either way, this is enough to move forward. He reached for his phone. I need to make a call. Maya watched as he dialed. She had never seen Chon look rattled before. But now, there was something in his face. Something that told her things were about to get even worse. And she was right, because when Chon hung up, his face was pale. He looked at Maya, his jaw tight. The judge knows you're onto him. Maya's breath caught. What? Chon nodded. We intercepted a message from Harold Wickham to Warwick. He told him you stole the login info. Maya's stomach dropped. That meant Judge Warwick knew everything. And if he was desperate before, he would be ruthless now. Chon stood abruptly, grabbing his gun and holster. We need to move. Now. Maya's pulse raced. Where? To put you in protective custody. But before he could take another step, the power in the entire FBI field office cut out. The lights flickered, then went dark. Phones went silent. Computer monitors shut off. An eerie silence filled the room. Then the sound of tires screeching outside. Maya's breath hitched. Someone was coming. The silence in the FBI field office was deafening. Maya clutched Brianna close, her heart hammering in her chest. The power was out. The emergency lights flickered weakly. Outside, the sound of screeching tires filled the air. Something was very, very wrong. Chon cursed under his breath, reaching for his radio. This is Agent Chon. Field office power is down. Possible security breach. Request immediate backup. Static. No response. Chon grabbed his gun. We need to get out of here. Now. Maya's stomach twisted. Who is it? Chan's jaw clenched. If Warwick knows we have evidence against him, he's not going to wait for a trial. He's going to take us out before we can expose him. A chill crawled down Maya's spine. They weren't safe. Not even in an FBI office. Rebecca's voice was tight. How do we get out? Chon moved quickly, guiding them toward a back exit. He peered through the small window in the door, his body tensed. Then he swore. Maya's pulse quickened. What? Chon turned to her, his face grave. Black SUVs. No plates. Armed men. Maya's breath caught. Is it the FBI? Chan's expression told her everything she needed to know. No, it wasn't the FBI. Maya tightened her grip on Brianna. We're trapped. Chon shook his head. Not yet. He spun toward a locked storage room and kicked the door open. Inside, rows of old case files and evidence crates lined the walls. He moved quickly, grabbing a key card from a desk drawer. There's an underground exit, he said, motioning for them to follow. It leads to a secure garage. Maya didn't hesitate. She ran after him, clutching Brianna as they weaved through the dimly lit hallways. The sound of boots pounding against the floor echoed from the front of the building. They're inside, Rebecca whispered, fear lacing her voice. Chon pulled out his gun, motioning for silence. They turned down another corridor, stopping in front of an elevator panel. He swiped the key card, and with a soft beep, a hidden door slid open. A metal staircase led downward into darkness. Go, Chan ordered. Maya didn't need to be told twice. She rushed down the steps, Rebecca right behind her. Chan followed last, keeping his gun raised. The moment they reached the bottom, the door slammed shut above them. Seconds later, boom, the explosion shook the building. Maya cried out, shielding Brianna as dust and debris rained from the ceiling. The lights flickered violently before plunging into total darkness. For a few heart-stopping moments, there was only silence. Then, Chan's voice, move. Maya forced her feet to move. The underground passage stretched ahead, dim emergency lights guiding the way. They ran. Every breath felt like fire in Maya's lungs, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. The passage sloped downward, leading to a heavy steel door. Chan swiped the keycard again. Nothing. He swiped it again. Still nothing. They locked us in, he growled, slamming a fist against the door. Maya's chest tightened. What do we do? Chan turned to Rebecca. You still have your press credentials? Rebecca nodded, panting. Yeah, why? Chan exhaled. Because right now, our best weapon isn't a gun. It's exposure. Maya's mind reeled. You mean you want to go public? Chan nodded. If we disappear, they'll cover it up. But if the world knows what's happening, they can't make us vanish so easily. Rebecca's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. The power's out. No Wi-Fi. Chan handed her a small device. Satellite uplink. Get the story out now. Rebecca's fingers flew across her phone screen. Maya swallowed hard, staring at the locked door. On the other side, men were hunting them, and if they got through, there would be no escape. Then something clicked in her memory. The keystroke recorder. Her eyes widened. Wait, I still have the data from Whitcomb's computer. Rebecca's head snapped up. You copied it? Maya nodded, digging into her pocket and pulling out a small USB drive. Rebecca grabbed it. If we upload this, it's over for them. Chan took a deep breath. Do it. Rebecca connected the drive to her phone. The file loaded. And then, gunfire erupted above them. Maya's heart stopped. They're coming, Chan said, his voice tight. We're out of time. Rebecca hit send. The file uploaded. A news alert flashed across the screen. Breaking. Federal judge and bank executive under investigation for corruption and murder. Chan checked his radio. Backup is incoming. The gunfire grew louder. Then, a bang echoed through the tunnel. The steel door had been breached. A figure stepped through, gun raised. Maya's blood ran cold. It wasn't just any attacker. It was Judge Ronald Warwick himself. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Judge Ronald Warwick stepped through the steel doorway, his face twisted in cold fury. His crisp black suit was speckled with dust from the explosion above, but his smirk was still there. Just as smug, just as dangerous. A pistol gleamed in his right hand. Behind him, two armed men followed, their faces concealed beneath dark masks. No more hiding. No more pretending. The judge had come to end this himself. Well, Warwick mused, stepping forward. His voice was smooth, almost amused. I have to admit, Miss Jackson, you've been quite the nuisance. Maya stood frozen, shielding Brianna behind her. Chan's grip tightened on his own gun, but he didn't fire. Not yet. He was outnumbered. They all were. Rebecca clutched her phone like a lifeline, her breath coming in quick gasps. The story's out, she said, her voice trembling. The whole country knows what you did. Warwick barely reacted. And yet, he said, tilting his head, you're still here, cornered like rats. Tell me, Miss Jackson, do you really think a news article is going to save you? Maya clenched her fists. It's not just an article. Warwick arched a brow. It's proof, she continued. Proof of your corruption. Proof that you framed me. The FBI already has it. The judge's smirk wavered for the first time. He glanced at the masked men beside him, exchanging a silent look. Then his gaze darkened. Then I suppose there's no reason to keep this quiet anymore. Without another word, he lifted his gun and fired. The shot rang through the underground tunnel. Maya squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the pain, but it never came. Instead, a grunted curse filled the air. Maya's eyes snapped open. Chan had lunged in front of her, knocking Warwick's arm just in time. The bullet slammed into the concrete wall behind them. Chaos erupted. Chon fired. One of Warwick's men went down. The second dove behind cover, returning fire. Rebecca screamed, dropping to the ground. Maya yanked Brianna into her arms, shielding her from the gunfire. Runs? Chon shouted, reloading. Get her out of here! Maya hesitated for half a second. Then she bolted. With Brianna clinging to her, Maya sprinted down the tunnel. The emergency exit had to be close. Gunshots echoed behind them. She didn't dare look back. The underground passage twisted ahead. A metal ladder led up to a grate, an emergency escape hatch. Maya didn't think. She shoved Brianna onto the first rung. Climb, baby! Climb! Brianna scrambled up, her tiny hands gripping the cold metal. Maya followed, her arms shaking from adrenaline. Just as Brianna reached the top, another gunshot cracked through the air. Maya gasped and felt fire explode through her shoulder. Pain shot through her, white-hot and searing. Her grip slipped. For a terrifying moment, she almost fell. Mommy! Brianna sobbed, reaching down. Maya gritted her teeth, forcing herself to keep climbing. Her arms screamed in protest, but she would not stop. With a final push, she reached the top. The street was just on the other side of the grate. Summoning every last ounce of strength, Maya shoved the heavy metal cover aside and gasped. Red and blue lights flooded the street. FBI vehicles, police cars, SWAT trucks. They had arrived. Maya barely had time to register it before strong hands grabbed her and Brianna, yanking them to safety. You're okay, ma'am, an officer said. We've got you. Maya collapsed onto the pavement, sucking in ragged breaths. Brianna sobbed into her chest, clutching her tight. It was over. They were safe. Seconds later, the tunnel exploded with movement. Armed FBI agents stormed inside. Gunfire erupted, shouts echoed, and then silence. Maya's vision blurred. Her body ached. She was dimly aware of paramedics rushing toward her, checking her wound, speaking in hushed tones. She tried to stay awake, tried to hold on to Brianna's tiny hand, but exhaustion won, and everything went black. Maya woke to the steady beep, beep, beep of a hospital monitor. For a moment, she panicked. Then, warm fingers wrapped around hers. She turned her head, groggy. Brianna sat beside her hospital bed, her little face tired but safe. Mama, she whispered, you're okay. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. We're okay, baby. A throat cleared. Maya glanced up. Rebecca stood near the window, arms crossed. Beside her, Special Agent Chon, bandaged but alive. And, standing next to him, Judge Ronald Warwick. In handcuffs, Maya's heart slammed against her ribs. The once powerful judge stood stiffly, his eyes dark, his smirk gone. Chon spoke first. It's over, Maya. Maya swallowed hard, her voice hoarse. He's arrested? Chon nodded. Conspiracy. Fraud. Tampering with evidence. An attempted murder. Warwick glared at him, but said nothing. Rebecca stepped forward, holding up her phone. The whole country knows what you did, Judge. You won't get out of this one. Warwick's expression barely flickered. Then, in a chillingly calm voice, he said, You think I'm the only one? You think this stops with me? Maya's breath hitched. Chan's jaw clenched. We'll find them too. Warwick's lips curled into a smirk. I hope you do, he murmured, because you have no idea how deep this goes. Maya shivered. Even in cuffs, Warwick still felt dangerous. But as the FBI agents led him away, something inside her settled. He was gone. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. But Warwick's final words clung to her. This wasn't just about him. It had never been. And if he was right, then the real fight was only just beginning. Maya should have felt relieved. The man who had nearly destroyed her life, Judge Ronald Warwick, was finally in handcuffs. The truth was out. The media was in a frenzy. The FBI had the evidence. But something about his final words haunted her. You have no idea how deep this goes. It had been days since Warwick's arrest, and Maya was still recovering in the hospital. The bullet had torn through her shoulder, but the doctors assured her she would heal. Physically, at least. Mentally? She wasn't sure. She sat on the hospital bed, staring at the news playing on the small TV across the room. Breaking news. Federal judge and bank executive arrested in major corruption scandal. The footage showed Warwick being led out of the courthouse, a sea of reporters screaming questions at him. He kept his head high, that smug smirk barely faltering. Then, the screen shifted to another familiar face, Harold Whitcomb, the Crestview Bank executive. He was also in custody, looking pale and shaken as agents pushed him into a waiting car. Maya clenched her jaw. It should have felt like justice. Instead, it felt like the calm before the storm. Because if Warwick was telling the truth, this was just the beginning. The next morning, Special Agent Chan arrived at the hospital. He looked exhausted. His arm was bandaged from a wound he'd gotten during the shootout, and his shirt was wrinkled, as if he hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," he said, pulling up a chair. Maya nodded. "What's happening?" Chan exhaled, rubbing his temple. "The case is bigger than we thought." Maya's stomach twisted. "How much bigger?" Chan leaned forward. "The FBI's been digging into Warwick's finances. Turns out Crestview Bank wasn't the only one involved." Maya frowned. "What do you mean?" "Warwick was being paid off by multiple organizations," Chan said. "Real estate companies, private investors, even city officials. Every case he handled, every ruling he made, it was all bought." Maya inhaled sharply. "So, what happens now?" she asked. Chan hesitated. "The Department of Justice wants to build a bigger case before bringing in more people. If we push too fast, some of these guys will run. We need to catch everyone involved." Maya gritted her teeth. That's why Warwick wasn't scared. He knew there were more people protecting him. Chan nodded grimly. "And here's the part that concerns me most." He pulled out his phone and showed Maya a picture. It was a hit list. Her stomach dropped. Her name was at the top, along with Chan's and Rebecca Murphy's. "This was found on one of Ward's burner phones," Chan said. "Someone paid to have you silenced, and they still want you dead." Maya's breath came in short gasps. She reached for Brianna, who was coloring quietly in the chair beside her. She thought it was over. It wasn't. "Does that mean someone else is still out there?" she whispered. Chan's jaw tightened. "Not just someone. A lot of people." Maya's hand shook. She had fought so hard to clear her name. Now she was caught in something even worse. "Then what do we do?" she asked. Chan exhaled. "We keep fighting." Maya closed her eyes. She had no choice. That night, Maya barely slept. Every sound outside the hospital room made her flinch. Every passing shadow made her think of the masked man who had broken into her apartment. She wanted to believe she was safe. But the truth was she wasn't. The people who had framed her, who had tried to kill her, were still out there. And they weren't finished yet. As she stared at the ceiling, a new thought formed in her mind. She had spent months running. But that was over. If they wanted to come after her, she would come after them first. The next morning, Maya called Rebecca. "I need your help," she said. Rebecca hesitated. "Maya, are you sure about this?" Maya clenched her jaw. "They want me dead. I'm not just going to sit here and wait." Rebecca sighed. "What do you need?" Maya took a deep breath. "I need to find everyone connected to Warwick. Every single person who benefited from his corruption. I don't care how high up it goes. I want names." Rebecca was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Meet me in an hour." Maya hung up, determination burning in her chest. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about exposing everyone behind this. And she wasn't stopping until she took them all down. Maya sat in the back corner of a dimly lit cafe, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. She wasn't here for the coffee. She was here for the truth. Rebecca slid into the seat across from her, a thick folder clutched in her hands. Her face was tense, her usual confidence edged with concern. "I don't like this, Maya," she said in a low voice. "You barely survived the first time. Digging deeper? It's going to make you a bigger target." Maya met her gaze, unflinching. "I don't have a choice. They put my daughter on a hit list, Rebecca. If I don't take them down, they won't stop until I'm dead." Rebecca sighed, running a hand through her hair. "All right, but if we're doing this, we do it smart." She opened the folder and slid a sheet of paper toward Maya. It was a list of names. Maya's eyes scanned the document, her stomach tightening. She recognized a few business executives, real estate moguls, city council members. People who had everything to lose if Warwick's corruption was fully exposed. These are the ones we know were paying off Warwick, Rebecca murmured. But here's the kicker. She flipped to another page. This is a list of cases Warwick handled over the last 10 years. Look at how many ended in sudden dismissals or convenient rulings. Maya's breath hitched. There were hundreds. Every single one of them reeked of corruption. This isn't just a few dirty officials, Rebecca said. This is a network. Maya exhaled, her mind racing. The FBI needs to see this. Rebecca shook her head. The FBI is already stretched thin with Warwick and Whitcomb. If we take this to them now, they'll spend months building a case. By the time they move, half these people will have disappeared or destroyed evidence. Maya frowned. Then what do we do? Rebecca hesitated. We force their hand. Maya's brows furrowed. How? Rebecca leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. We go after the biggest name on that list. The one person the rest of them will scramble to protect. She flipped to the last page. Maya's blood ran cold. It was a senator. Special Agent David Chon was not happy. You're insane, he said, pacing back and forth in his office. Do you have any idea what you're suggesting? Maya sat across from him, arms crossed. Rebecca stood beside her, unyielding. We expose Senator William Alderman, Rebecca said firmly. He's the highest-ranking name on that list. If we make his involvement public, it will send everyone else into a panic. They'll start turning on each other just to save themselves. Chon exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple. You're talking about taking on a U.S. senator. That's not just corruption. That's political suicide. He's dirty, Chon, Maya said, her voice steady. You saw the records. He's been funneling bribes through Warwick's court for years. He's protected criminals, silenced whistleblowers, and gotten rich off the system he swore to uphold. Chon leaned against his desk, his jaw tight. You really want to go after a man with federal power? He asked. Maya nodded. Yes, because if we don't, he'll keep getting away with it. Chon exhaled. Fine, but we do this carefully. He pulled out a file from his drawer and flipped it open. We've had suspicions about Alderman for years, he admitted. But no one's ever had enough proof to nail him. Rebecca smirked. Well, now we do. Chon eyed the documents. If we expose this the right way, we might be able to force a federal investigation. But we need more than just financial records. We need direct evidence tying Alderman to Warwick's crimes. Maya straightened. How do we get that? Chon hesitated. Then, reluctantly, he said, we need someone inside his operation. Maya's stomach twisted. You mean we need a whistleblower? Chon nodded. And I think I know where to start. The next day, Maya, Rebecca, and Chon drove to an upscale neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. They parked outside a towering white mansion with iron gates. Maya frowned. Who lives here? Chon put the car in park. Alderman's chief financial officer. The guy who's been handling all his dirty money. Maya's heart pounded. You think he'll talk? Chan's expression was grim. If he knows what's good for him, he will. They got out of the car and approached the gate. Before they could press the intercom, the front door flew open. A man in a suit came running down the driveway, eyes wild with fear. He looked directly at them. Help me, he gasped. They're going to kill me. Maya barely had time to react before. Bang! A gunshot ripped through the air. The man collapsed onto the pavement, blood pooling beneath him. Maya screamed. Chon yanked her back, drawing his gun. A black car sped away from the mansion, tires screeching. Rebecca had her phone out in seconds, snapping photos of the license plate. Chon cursed under his breath. Damn it! That was our informant. Maya's chest heaved. They were too late. Whoever had silenced him. They were still watching. And now, they knew Maya was coming for them. Maya stood frozen, staring at the blood pooling on the pavement. The man, Alderman CFO, lay still, his eyes wide open, lifeless. A fresh bullet wound bled from his chest. He had been their best chance at taking down Senator Alderman. And now he was gone. Chon lowered his gun, his face tight with frustration. Get in the car. Now! Maya barely registered the words. The sound of the gunshot still rang in her ears. Someone had just been murdered right in front of her. Because of her. Rebecca grabbed her arm, yanking her toward the car. Maya moved. The shock snapped, and Maya stumbled back toward the vehicle, her breath coming in short gasps. They piled in, slamming the doors. Chan floored the gas pedal, tires screeching as they sped away from the crime scene. Behind them, the mansion shrank in the distance, but the fear inside Maya only grew. This wasn't just a cover-up anymore. This was elimination. And she was next. 15 minutes later, they pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a federal building. Chan turned off the car and exhaled sharply. That was a damn hit job. Rebecca was already texting someone furiously. I sent the license plate number to my contacts. If the shooter's tied to Alderman, we'll know soon. Maya's hand still shook. Someone had been willing to kill to keep the senator's secrets. And they would come for her next. We need a new plan, Chan muttered. That was our key witness. Maya clenched her jaw. Then we find another one. Chan scoffed. It's not that easy. It has to be, Maya snapped. Because they're not just trying to cover this up anymore. They're hunting us. The weight of her own words made her stomach churn. She was no longer just a scapegoat in a corruption case. She was a threat to the people running it, which meant they wouldn't stop until she was dead. Chan ran a hand down his face. All right, we go on the offensive. Maya frowned. What does that mean? Chan turned to Rebecca. You still have sources inside the senator's office? Rebecca nodded. One or two. Tell them to leak everything they have, Chan said. If we can't get a witness, we burn them from the outside. Rebecca's eyes widened. You want to expose Alderman publicly before the FBI can act? Chan nodded. Exactly. If the media turns against him, he'll have no choice but to go on defense. He'll be too busy saving his career to come after Maya. Rebecca hesitated. That's risky. Maya straightened. So is waiting for them to kill us. The room went silent. Rebecca sighed. All right, but if we do this, we need real proof, documents, bank transfers, something concrete. Chan nodded. And I think I know where to find them. Maya looked at him sharply. Where? Chan hesitated. Then he said, inside the senator's private office. Maya's stomach dropped. You're saying we need to break in? Chan didn't blink. I'm saying we need to finish this before they finish us. Maya inhaled slowly. This was it. The final move. Either they exposed Alderman, or they ended up dead. And Maya wasn't planning to die. 2 nights later, Maya, Chan, and Rebecca stood outside a sleek office building in the heart of the city. It was past midnight, and the streets were quiet. Alderman's private office was on the 17th floor. Chan handed Maya a small earpiece. We go in, grab the files, and get out. Fast and quiet. Maya swallowed hard. And if we get caught? Chan's expression was grim. Then we're in a lot of trouble. Rebecca adjusted the strap of her backpack. Then let's not get caught. Maya exhaled. No turning back now. They slipped inside. The lobby was empty. Chan led them to a security panel near the elevators. He pulled out a device and attached it to the keypad. A few seconds later, beep, the elevator doors slid open. Maya's pulse pounded as they stepped inside. Chan pressed 17. As the elevator ascended, Maya's mind raced. They were breaking into a senator's office. If they were caught, there would be no trial. No arrest. They'd just disappear. The elevator stopped. The doors slid open to a darkened hallway. They moved quickly, staying close to the walls. Chan found the office door and picked the lock in seconds. They slipped inside. Maya barely breathed as she looked around. The office was immaculate. Expensive furniture, a bar cart with whiskey, a large desk with a sleek computer monitor. This was where Senator Alderman conducted his business, where he had orchestrated corruption, bribery, and murder. Rebecca moved first, digging through filing cabinets. Chan pulled out a USB stick. I'll crack the computer. Maya helped Rebecca sift through the drawers. Papers, contracts, memos. Then, Maya froze. Her own name stared back at her from a printed document. A memo from Senator Alderman to Judge Ronald Warwick. The subject line, Maya Jackson, contained the problem. Maya's stomach twisted as she read the words. Warwick, handle this quietly. Jackson cannot be allowed to expose what she knows. If necessary, remove her permanently. Maya's hands trembled. She had never been just an accidental scapegoat. They had planned this from the beginning. Chan's voice cut through her panic. I got it. He unplugged the USB drive. I have emails, transaction records, wire transfers. This is everything. Rebecca's voice shook. Then let's get the hell out of here. They turned for the door, and then the office lights flicked on. Maya's breath caught. Standing in the doorway was Senator William Alderman himself, flanked by two armed men. His lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. Well, he said smoothly, adjusting his cufflinks. I must say, I expected you to be persistent, Miss Jackson. Maya's hands clenched into fists. Alderman tilted his head. Tell me, do you really think you'll leave this building alive? Maya's pulse roared. The final battle had begun. Maya's heart pounded as Senator William Alderman took a slow step into the office, his two armed men flanking him like shadows. Behind her, Chan shifted subtly, positioning himself between Maya and Rebecca while his hand inched toward his gun. Alderman smirked. You should have stayed quiet, Miss Jackson. Maya swallowed, her pulse roaring in her ears. She forced herself to stand tall, even as fear crawled up her spine. Funny, that's exactly what Warwick said before he was arrested. Alderman chuckled. And yet, here you are, trapped. Maya glanced at Chan, then Rebecca. They had proof, documents, wire transfers, even a memo with her name on it, directly tying Alderman to Warwick's corruption. But it wouldn't matter if they didn't get out of here alive. Alderman adjusted his cufflinks. Do you have any idea who I am? Rebecca scoffed. Yeah, you're a criminal. Alderman's smirk widened. No, dear. I'm a senator. Do you really think an article or some stolen files will be enough to take me down? Maya clenched her fists. It's already done. The FBI has the documents. The world knows. Alderman's smile faltered for the briefest moment before he quickly recovered. Ah, he mused. So you think the FBI will protect you? He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You don't understand how deep this runs. I own people in that agency. Maya's stomach twisted. Was he bluffing? Or was the corruption even worse than they thought? Chan spoke then, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. Then why are you here? If you're so untouchable, why come yourself? Alderman's eyes flicked toward him, and for the first time, Maya saw it. The faintest flicker of doubt. Chan smirked. You're scared. Alderman's jaw tightened. And that was all the confirmation Maya needed. He wasn't here because he owned the system. He was here because he was losing control. Maya exhaled, the fear in her gut morphing into something stronger, determination. We're walking out of here, she said. And you can't stop it. Alderman's expression darkened. His hand flicked. One of the armed men lunged forward, but Chan was faster. Bang! The gunshot exploded through the room as Chan fired first, dropping the attacker in a single shot. Maya grabbed Rebecca and ran as the second man raised his weapon. Bang! Bang! Chan fired again, and the second man collapsed against the desk, clutching his chest. Alderman stumbled back, his face pale with shock. The room fell silent. For the first time, the powerful senator stood alone. No bodyguards, no allies. Just him. Maya turned to face him, her breath heaving. This is over, she said. Alderman's hands clenched. You think you've won? He hissed. Maya nodded. Yeah, I do. And just as she spoke, the entire building filled with the sound of sirens. FBI, SWAT, local police. Alderman's face drained of color. He knew. It was too late. Minutes later, the office was swarmed with federal agents. Senator William Alderman was handcuffed, his face frozen in a stunned expression as he was read his rights. Maya watched as they dragged him away, her chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. It was real. It was finally over. Rebecca let out a shaky laugh, rubbing her forehead. I can't believe that actually worked. Chan exhaled, holstering his gun. You two are going to give me a damn heart attack. Maya just stood there, the weight of everything crashing down on her at once. It was over. Judge Warwick gone. Harold Whitcomb gone. Senator Alderman gone. And the entire corrupt network they had built? Falling apart. Maya reached in her pocket, pulling out her phone. She dialed a number, her hands shaking. After 2 rings, a soft little voice answered. Mommy. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. Hey, baby. Brianna's voice brightened. Are you coming home now? Maya swallowed past the lump in her throat. Yes, baby, she whispered. I'm coming home. 3 weeks later. The trial of Senator William Alderman made national headlines. His crimes, conspiracy, fraud, bribery, attempted murder, were all laid out for the world to see. More arrests followed. City officials, business executives, even law enforcement officers who had been bought by Alderman's network. The system had been rotting from the inside for years. But now, the truth was out. Maya sat in her small apartment, watching the news. For the first time in months, she could breathe. There were still scars, both physical and emotional. But she had won. She had cleared her name. She had survived. And most importantly, she had made sure that justice was served. That evening, as she tucked Brianna into bed, the little girl looked up at her with big, sleepy eyes. Mommy, she mumbled. Are the bad guys gone now? Maya stroked her daughter's hair, smiling softly. Yes, baby, she whispered. The bad guys are gone. Brianna yawned, curling into her blanket. Maya kissed her forehead and turned off the light. As she stepped out of the room, she glanced at her phone one last time. A text from Chan flashed on the screen. They found more names. The corruption runs deeper than we thought. Maya's chest tightened. She exhaled slowly. She had fought her battle. She had won. But the war? The war was far from over. And if the fight ever came knocking on her door again, she'd be ready.